Hello and welcome to BattleTech Faction Briefings. Today, we are continuing our summer project, focusing on the Wolf's Dragoons. If you have not seen the Alpha Regiment video yet, please pause this video and give it a watch. For everyone else, we are looking at a unit that is nicknamed Second to None and the Timberwolves. They may not be Alpha Chads, but they sure as hell aren't Beta Boys. Today, we are discussing the Wolf's Dragoons Beta Regiment. All Dragoon units use the same mercenary emblem of a angry, snarling black wolf head on a red background. Beta puts the emblem on their mechs' chests and the fuselages of their fighters. The main insignia of Beta Regiment is a Greek beta. It is placed on the left leg of their mechs, left fender of their vehicles, and left wing of their fighters. Each battalion has its own insignia as well. They put their battalion insignia near the beta symbol. The command company uses a magician's hat with rabbit ears sticking out. Abel uses a dark rider on a pale horse. Baker uses a broken heart. And Charlie uses a guillotine that matches their nickname. Beta Regiment uses a solid paint scheme of emerald green for all their machines, except their fighters, that are oftentimes painted in bright colors, usually canary yellow. Like many of the Wolf's Dragoons, Beta has a long and wild history. To skip spoilers, go to the time listed. Like the rest of the Dragoons, Beta Regiment was formed in the clan homeworlds. Like other regiments, they were trained by Clan Goliath Scorpion to learn how to act more like Inner Sphere soldiers. One of the key members who joined the team was a woman by the name of Natasha Krensky, a true-born Clan Wolf warrior. Despite being a Star Colonel, upon joining the Dragoons, she was demoted to Lieutenant in order to play down her very important blood name. Interestingly, her subordinate from the 328th Assault Cluster, Jamie Wolf, was chosen as both the Alpha and Mercenary Unit Commander. After arriving in the Inner Sphere in 3005, the Dragoons took up a contract with the Federated Suns. In February 3006, Beta Regiment was sent to Halloran V, a Capellan world that was used as a staging point for raids into the Federated Suns. Beta headed out with Gamma, Delta, Zeta Battalion, and the 7th Commando, with overall command being ordered by Colonel Jamie Wolf. Halloran was defended by Mirian's Highlanders and the Black Wind Lancers. The first move was to have Zeta's assault mechs rush in and push the Capellan forces out of their defensive zone. The next move was to have Beta, Gamma, and Zeta hit the enemy's left flank, while Delta functioned as a distraction on the right flank. Beta moved in first with an incendiary attack on a forest, and their heavy and assault mechs moved in during the chaos. They hit Marian's Highlanders hard, and Gamma moved in to push the attack forward. The next day, the Highlanders rallied and held off attacks by Beta and Gamma. Then the Commandos moved in to assist Delta in the distraction of the Black Wind Lancers. They got pushed into the Highlanders, causing chaos in the Liao ranks. The Liao forces eventually had to retreat even after reinforcements arrived. After 5 days of fighting, the Wolf's Dragoons had finally won their first major battle. In 3007, the Dragoons' base on New Valencia was attacked by 5 regiments of McCarran's armored cavalry. Alpha and Beta were stationed on Wikipog. They headed out to join up with their team, but the arrival of the Iridani Light Horse turned the tables for the Fed Suns forces, and Big Mac retreated before Alpha and Beta arrived. Later that year, Beta faced off with a Capellan raid on Wikipog. Beta Regiment took on the St. Ives Armored Cavalry. The raiders were no match for Beta. After that, Beta and the Dragoons Fire Support Group ran counter-raids into Capellan territory. In March 3008, the majority of the Dragoons were sent in as part of an invasion of New Aragon, alongside 5 regiments of Davian troops. The world of New Aragon was guarded by 8 Liao regiments. The Capellans had taken the world earlier that year, thus this was a necessary counterattack. In preparation for the attack, small raiding teams were sent to nearby systems to function as a distraction. The Avalon Hussars and Crucis Lancers took on the 1st and 2nd Ariana Fusiliers, Fremont's Cuirassiers, and Tremaldi's Secutors. 5 regiments of the Wolf's Dragoons were teamed up with the 4th Deneb Light Cavalry and faced off with the 1st and 2nd Kearney Highlanders, McCormick's Fusiliers, and the Waco Rangers. Their arrival was met with disaster as the 4th Deneb's dropship took damage from the aerospace fighters, and the damage put their unit out of the battle for a week as they repaired and regrouped. The Dragoons' ship was hit as well, but they recovered and pushed forward with the attack. The Highlanders were bombarded by artillery, yet were still able to hold off the Dragoons. The other Davian forces were also having trouble, so Jamie Wolfe came up with a plan. He sent the 7th Commando with light mechs from Alpha and Gamma regiments to drop behind the defenders of the El Diablo Pass. Then, Zeta Regiment hit them from the front, and the Waco Rangers took heavy damage, including the death of their recon commander, Lieutenant John Waco, who was accidentally killed due to being stepped on after ejecting from his destroyed Wasp. This would lead to a grudge the Rangers would hold against the Dragoons for decades. The rest of the Dragoons followed Zeta and easily dealt with McCormick's Fusiliers. After the Capellan forces were overrun, the world was returned to the Federated Sons. The remainder of their contract with House Davian was limited. A good portion of 3009 was used for a return trip to clan space in order to report their findings. Then, in 3010, the Dragoons took up a contract with the Capellan Confederation. While working for the Capellans, Beta Regiment was set to garrison duty, and only did minor raids on the Free Worlds League. They were on Carver 5, then transferred to Principia with Gamma Regiment. Members of the Dragoons grew restless with the lack of action they saw during this time. In early 3014, a deal was made that placed the Dragoons under the employ of Anton Merrick to assist in his rebellion against his brother. Beta Regiment was part of Task Force Eagle, with the goal of reaching Atreus. The team was made up of Beta, Zeta, the 7th Commando, the 3rd Ducal Guard, and the 4th Regulan Hussars. Their first step was Nova Roma. They faced off with the 9th Merrick Militia, as well as 6 regiments of local defenders, made up of infantry and armor. As the fighting continued, the commandos took the leadership of the planet hostage. The local troops surrendered, and the 9th fled the world, and went to Emrys 4. Afterward, Task Force Eagle remained on world to hunt loyalist resistance fighters. A big problem came when Natasha Kerensky's heavy lance came across Gary Stu. I mean, the bounty hunter. He gave them bad intel, and her team was ambushed. Only Natasha and one other mech warrior survived, with the bounty hunter taking Natasha's Marauder as salvage before leaving with his team. This would lead to an inquiry that cleared Natasha of all charges of wrongdoing. After that, she and the other survivor, Colin McLaren, were put into a new company made up of discipline cases and troublemakers from other units that were on the edge of being removed from the Dragoons. After the Merrick Civil War, this unit would be given the name Black Widow Company. Beta Regiment would be sent to join Alpha, Gamma, Zeta, and the fire support team to take Emrys 4. The world was defended by the 9th and 6th Merrick Militia, as well as local forces and heavy aerofighter support. The fighter battle was fierce, but the rebels were able to land with very little problem. Beta teamed up with Zeta and the fire support team to go after the 9th. However, they had to deal with constant ambushes during the campaign. Able Company took heavy damage in an ambush, and its leader, Nikos Palasis, lost his warhammer and had to be evacuated. The battle would be concluded by Captain Alicia Fancher, who called in armor and artillery support to destroy any and all entrenched loyalist buildings. The 9th fled alongside the 6th, who were defeated by Alpha and Gamma. Beta was mostly unscathed, and the Dragoons stayed on Emrys to repair and recover. Later that year, Beta, Gamma, and Kerensky's team formed Task Force Condor, a relief force that was designed to assist in protecting the southern flank of the rebel advance. Their mission was on Matheron, where the 12th Atrean Dragoons were pinned down by the 11th Atrean Dragoons and Smithson's Chinese bandits. The bandits fled upon learning the Dragoons were coming. The Dragoons used a drop operation to surround the 11th, who surrendered upon realizing they were heavily outnumbered. The next mission took Task Force Condor to Callaway 6. The team was expanded with the remains of the 12th Atrean Dragoons and the 3rd Ducal Guards. The world was a staging point for the next phase of the Loyalist counterattack. The defenders were made up of 5 major regiments: the 1st, 2nd, and 6th Orente Hussars, 2nd Fusiliers of Orente, and the 6th Defenders of Endurian. They had plenty of resources and access to an Earthworks Incorporated factory. The task force was under attack upon their arrival. The Atrean Dragoons lost a dropship, destroying an entire company. Kerensky's company cleared a landing zone for the remaining forces. Beta and Gamma worked together to take on the 6th Orente Hussars and the 6th Defenders of Endurian. The Hussars were defeated, but the 2nd Fusiliers moved in to assist the 6th Defenders. Things got worse when the 1st and 2nd Hussars drove a wedge between the Dragoons and the other rebel forces. The 3rd Ducal Guard surrendered, and the Dragoons began their retreat. They had an orderly withdrawal, but this was the first defeat for the Dragoons, and the first time Beta took moderate losses. As things got worse for the rebels, a desperate attack was planned for Tibur in January 3015. The team was made up of Beta, Zeta, Fire Support Group, Kerensky's company, and the 6th and 8th Ducal Guards. The Ducal Guard units were made up of new soldiers and members of broken units. The team easily took the undefended planet. However, a counterattack came in the form of the 1st Regulan Hussars with the 1st, 5th, 6th, and 8th Orloff Grenadiers. Despite being made up of 1 battalion, the Hussars held the landing zone for their allies. The 5th Orloff took on Beta, and the 8th Orloff took on Zeta, and the 6th Orloff took on the Ducal Guard units, and easily broke them despite the efforts of the Kerensky company. A retreat was called, and the Dragoon units evacuated with moderate losses again. After a couple months of recovery, the whole of the Wolf's Dragoons headed out to attack McKenna. It was guarded by the 1st and 2nd Regulan Hussars. The Hussars took heavy losses and fled the world. After hearing about liaison officer Joshua Wolf and 27 Dragoon dependents being held hostage by Anton Merrick, the Dragoons rushed over to New Delos. Shortly after arriving, they learned the hostages had been executed. As they pushed forward, the 1st Ducal Guards fled the world, as Alpha and Gamma assaulted Anton's fortress, and Delta took control of smaller locations. Beta and Zeta were kept in reserve. The Kerensky company braved a forest fire to assault the rear of the fortress, while Beta was sent out to take out fleeing enemies. Afterwards, the Dragoons went out to hunt any surviving rebel forces on New Delos. After the Merrick Civil War, the Dragoons took a contract with Janos Merrick. During this time of recovery, the Dragoons only did small raids into Lyran territory. In 3016, Beta and Delta were sent to Wyatt. The world was defended by the 11th Lyran Guards and 17th Arcturian Guards. This was a back-and-forth battle, but the Lyran forces had the terrain advantage. They had difficulty dealing with Lyran aerospace fighters and lost a dropship as they retreated, and an entire battalion of Beta Regiment was lost. Despite the failure, the FWLM considered this a win because it worked as a distraction while they assaulted 2 other worlds. This tragedy led to the retirement of Colonel Jeremy Ellman, the Beta Regiment commander. However, Jamie Wolf convinced him to stick around and become the leader of the training corps. This led to Andrei Shostakovich taking command. He was brash and skilled, which earned him the respect of the unit. Once Beta Regiment was recovered, they pulled off a successful raid on New Kyoto. The biggest operation during the Merrick contract was the assault on Hesperus II. In 3019, the Dragoons took a roundabout route to Hesperus to throw off the LCAF, but a Lyran spy found out about their true target. By the time the Dragoons arrived on Hesperus II, the planet had been reinforced by several LCAF and mercenary forces. The Lyran forces consisted of the 6th, 15th, and 24th Lyran Guards, 3rd Royal Guards, Eason Hotheads, and Hansen's Rough Riders. On the 6th of June, Alpha, Beta, and Gamma survived heavy air assaults while landing on the world. However, they were scattered and far from their objective. This gave the Lyran forces plenty of time to dig in and hold off the Dragoons. Delta and Epsilon were kept in reserve, but Jamie Wolf called them in as backup due to the fierce fighting. In the early stages, Jamie Wolf's command lance joined up with Beta to help secure positions. Beta's Baker Battalion made raids with up 2 strikes against the defenders, which made them stand out amongst the Dragoon forces. It took 2 weeks to reach the Erawan River. At that point, Beta had to rearm before continuing. Beta and Zeta were sent in to be distractions, while the Black Widows, alongside Delta and Epsilon, were attempting to flank the Defiance Industries factory. Beta held the line, but the defenders were too much, and the Black Widow forces needed to retreat. Beta would escort Jamie Wolf's command lance and the Black Widows as the Dragoons fled the world. Beta would be the second to last unit off-world, the last being Alpha, who was the rear guard. After the retreat, the Dragoons took time to recover. Jamie Wolf went back to clan space and returned with new equipment 6 months later. There was little action during this time of recovery. After that, the Dragoons took a contract with the Lyran Commonwealth. In early 3020, the Dragoons signed on with the Lyran Commonwealth. Their skill at Hesperus impressed Katrina Steiner. They were stationed on Chukchi 3. However, Beta was not involved with any of the major fighting during this contract. They used this time to tighten their ranks and sharpen their training. After 3 short years, the Dragoons left the Commonwealth and joined up with the Draconis Combine. Beta and Zeta were sent to Anting to escort the Dragoon dependents to their new home world. The commander of Beta, Andrei Shostakovich, traveled to Quinton and worked with DCMS liaison officer Minobu Tetsuhara. While Colonel Shostakovich assisted Colonel Wolf, Beta and Gamma would be sent to garrison Misery and run small raids into the Draconis March region of the Federated Suns. They faced minor issues while on Misery, such as the DCMS sending inadequate cold weather gear in 3024. Their first big operation was in 3025 as part of a distraction for the Galtor campaign. Beta, along with Gamma and Zeta, were sent to Deshir. Beta was sent out to raid the factories, while Gamma attacked the Raman Draconis March militia. It was expected to be an easy raid, but the 4th Davian Guards faced off with Beta Regiment. The 4th pulled off an ambush and divided the heavier and lighter elements of Beta. Baker Battalion was cut off, but Charlie Battalion held the line and bought enough time for the regiment to regroup. It took months of fighting, but Beta, with Zeta's support, was able to take the factories. However, the factories had been stripped of all valuable material and research, making this a very hollow victory. While Beta did take Deshir, the Galtork campaign failed, and the planet was almost cut off. The Dragoons were given the order to withdraw. They did enough damage to the 4th Davian Guards, which was considered a success to some extent. They took time to refit on Misery, but were sent to garrison Marlowe's End alongside a regiment of Ryukin some time afterwards. As the contract came to an end in 3028, things had gotten to a boiling point in the Draconis Combine. Fighting broke out on Anting and led to a battle between the Combine and the Dragoons on Misery. All units of Wolf's Dragoons faced off with 4 regiments of Ryukin, the 17th and 21st Gale Dawn Regulars, and the 8th Sword of Light. The Kurita forces were led by Taisho Minobu Tetsuhara, which made things more tense as former allies were now enemies. The Dragoons faced 3-2 odds, yet they kept fighting. Beta's 1st Charlie Company came across a Ryukin company during harsh weather conditions. The heavy Dragoon mechs took out the company before Kurita reinforcements arrived. They then took out a second Ryukin company. They achieved victory with minimal damage and received accolades from Colonel Wolf. Beta did have some serious losses, as the commander of Baker Battalion was killed after ejecting, and Lieutenant Shannon Vernon was demoted for refusing orders from her battalion commander. While the battle was a victory, the overall Dragoon losses were over 50%. Beta was reorganized into 5 provisional companies, and most of their conventional forces were added to the Home Guard to protect the Dragoon dependents. The 2 remaining battalion commanders retired after the heavy fighting of Misery. Colonel Wolf personally persuaded Major Fancher to retire after questioning her leadership abilities after she demoted Lieutenant Vernon. Despite the lack of leadership, the Beta Regiment losses weren't as bad as other regiments. Beta ended up trying to rebuild on Robinson as contracts were signed with House Davian. Beta morale was high, and they were ready for their next fight with House Kurita. When the war started, Beta and Delta regiments guarded Wapakoneta despite being under strength. They fought the 3rd Proserpina Hussars and the 12th Gale Dawn Regulars. They chose to use guerrilla tactics to deal with enemy numbers. Beta's 3rd Provisional Company ended up destroying 25 Kurita fighters when raiding an airfield. However, they were wiped out by the DCMS forces while trying to return to base. While guerrilla tactics kept the fight going, another company of Beta got nearly wiped out, fighting the 12th Light Company. Colonel Rondema led a team to ambush the Hussars. They led the Kurita forces into a minefield, cutting down enemy numbers. The Dragoons attempted to end this fight, and with information from locals, they hit the DCMS forces from behind, turning the tide of the battle. But the 5th Company got hit hard, and Danielle Rondema and her crew got wiped out. The battle became a back and forth with each side making minor progress against the other. After hitting the Combine forces hard one last time, the Dragoons fled the world. Of the 9 companies they had arrived with, Beta and Delta only had 4 left in total. Beta had lost nearly 2/3 of their mech warriors. All the Dragoons regrouped on crossing. However, there was only a regiment worth of mechs still functional, and many of their mechs were in bad shape. In September 3029, the Kurita forces came to crossing. 4 regiments of Gale Dawn regulars arrived to fight the Dragoons. This included the 5th, 8th, 12th, and 16th, all of whom had faced the Dragoons in previous battles. To make matters worse, an elite team called the Sword of Void came to assist. Due to the sheer number of mechs they were fielding, the DCMS did not bring any conventional forces to this fight. The Dragoons called up their conventional forces from the Home Guard that were stationed on Robinson. Despite a valiant defense, the number advantage of the Combine pushed the Dragoons to their breaking point. Beta Commander Shostakovich called for his troops to fall back while he covered them. His heroism rallied his troops and helped hold the line. Shostakovich was so tenacious that it took a lance worth of 16th Gale Dawn regulars to focus fire upon him in order to kill him. Beta was saved by the 10th Deneb regulars, hitting the 16th from behind. This bought enough time for Zeta Battalion to show up and give the rest of the Dragoons the relief they needed. This turned the tide of the battle, and the 5th Gale Dawn regulars were wiped out while retreating. The 16th surrendered to Natasha Kerensky. The 8th and 12th escaped after taking heavy damage. By the end of the Battle of Crossing, Beta only had 13 mech warriors remaining. After the war, Hans Davian gave the surviving Dragoons the World of Outreach. It took years to recover enough to field any kind of effective unit. The first unit to head out was Natasha Kerensky's Black Widow Battalion in 3031. In March 3035, Beta Regiment was back to operational strength. They were made up of veterans and newly trained war orphans, in addition to adding an armor battalion from the support group. It took 2 years of raids for Beta to get their elite status back. During this time, Alicia Fanschier was brought out of retirement to lead the Beta Regiment once again. In preparation for the invasion of the Draconis Combine, most of the Dragoons were sent to Cath. However, Beta and the Black Widows remained behind on outreach to protect the civilians and Dragoon dependents. When the clans arrived in the Inner Sphere, all regiments of Wolf's Dragoons were called back to outreach to have a meeting about how they should proceed. It was decided to assist the Inner Sphere, and the leadership of the successor states were called in for a meeting. The Dragoons briefed them on clan tactics and anti-clan warfare. In late 3051, Hans Davian chose to send the Kellhounds and the Wolf's Dragoons to Luthien to assist in the defense of the capital of the Draconis Combine. At this point, Beta had an elite reputation and could hold their own against any other elite unit. The Battle of Luthien began in January 3052. Beta was stationed with the Kellhounds and others in the Kadoguchi Valley. The team held off a rush by Clan Novacat. It was a costly battle, with Beta Regiment's armor taking heavy losses. But the combination of mercenaries and Karita elites led to a clan retreat. After the battle, Jamie Wolf quickly rebuilt his forces with clan bondsmen, war orphans, and the descendants of the original Dragoons. The salvage and factory-produced equipment brought the Dragoons up to strength in a short period of time. After the clans were stopped, it was business as usual for the Dragoons. Beta went out on mostly uneventful raids, until 3054, when they would face off with the Jade Falcons at Orgaz. The AFFC sent out the 4th Sky Rangers, 20th Arcturan Guards, along with Beta and the Spider's Web Battalion, to face off with Clan Jade Falcon's Peregrine Galaxy. The mission was so important that Jamie Wolf joined the assault group. Beta Regiment was able to hold the line, with Spider's Web moving in for a flanking maneuver. However, Jade Falcon reinforcements arrived, and they broke the Beta lines, nearly dividing the Fed Com forces. Beta Elementals and Jamie Wolf's team were able to keep the Fed Com forces together. It was not easy, but eventually the Jade Falcons retreated from the world. Tensions began to build inside the Dragoons. New members felt disenfranchised due to the perceived status of Legacy and Sibco Dragoon warriors. This angry faction would be united by bondsman Ilsen Novacat and Alpen Wolf, the grandson of Jamie Wolf. The building crisis brought Jamie Wolf back to outreach, along with Beta Regiment, who had been on a mission. Beta Regiment commander Alicia Fanchir joined up with the rebelling Dragoons due to still having anger at her dismissal after Misery, despite being brought back in prior to the War of 39. They had a meeting to settle internal issues, where Jamie Wolf was going to choose a new second-in-command. Elson Novacat challenged him on behalf of Alpen Wolf. Pieter Schad represented Jamie Wolf in the Circle of Equals, but Ilsen won, and Alpen Wolf became the commander of the Wolf's Dragoons. These events led to the Dragoon Civil War. Ilsen's side had Beta and Gamma regiments, along with part of Epsilon. Meanwhile, Alpha, Delta, Zeta, and Wolf Spiders were all on mission, leaving very few forces on the side of Jamie Wolf. A team of Karita recruits sided with Wolf after they were threatened by Beta Regiment when they had chosen to leave the world. Wolf also had the Home Guard on his side, and was lucky to have the late arriving Wolf Spider Battalion to assist with the fight. Iota Battalion got ambushed by the Home Guard with assistance from Wolf's Spiders. Beta's Baker Battalion moved in to assist Iota, while Charlie Battalion attempted to flank the Spiders. However, the Spiders had already begun pulling out. Beta kept advancing. The Home Guards tried to hold off Beta. Meanwhile, Zeta arrived to assist the Alpen Wolf faction. Beta and Zeta pushed back against Jamie Wolf's ragtag team, as the Spider's Web Battalion took on Gamma, and the Karita recruits tried holding off Epsilon units. In 3055, Beta was continuing to hunt Jamie Wolf's faction. They fought at a training area where Elementals harassed Beta, while Beta's communications were jammed. Wolf's forces pulled back, and Beta pursued, as Wolf's Elementals rode hovercrafts to give chase. The Home Guard moved in, and the battle moved in favor of Jamie Wolf. The battle was fierce, and Beta Commander Francher was killed. Her second-in-command pulled Beta back, as they were losing the battle. In addition to that, Elson Novacat was wounded by a Locust, and Alpen Wolf was defeated by Maeve Wolf in a one-on-one challenge. Zeta moved in, but were interrupted by Fleet Captain Isola Chandra, who declared Jamie Wolf winner of this trial. After that, Beta was reorganized and given a new commander. As things got back to normal, Beta and Delta were moved to defend the FedCom Jade Falcon border. However, most of their time was spent rebuilding. In 3058, Jamie Wolf assembled the Allied Mercenary Command in response to the word of Blake taking Terra and slowly taking over the Chaos March. Beta Regiment was sent to the Chaos March to help protect several worlds. Beta proved to be quite strong as they battled in the Chaos March. This was due to them having a large amount of clan tech in their forces. Their total unit strength brought them to 140% of operational standards. By mid-3067, Beta Regiment encountered the Blakist 1st Division on Epsilon, Iridani. However, 2 of their dropships were destroyed by the Blake forces. In the fighting, Beta's armor took 30% casualties. Then, Colonel Rand was captured, but later rescued by his troops. After that, Beta retreated and returned to Outreach. This led General Maeve Wolf to restructure Dragoon tactics. This plan increased conventional forces and expanded air support. Beta was able to build up their mech forces quickly, but armor and elementals took more time. By October 3067, they were mostly built up, just in time for Blake-sponsored mercenaries to show up and attack Outreach. The enemy mercenary force was made up of the Waco Rangers, Smithson's Chinese Bandits, Tiger Sharks, and the 51st Dark Panzer Jaegers. As the Blake-funded mercenaries made progress, lesser mercenaries on Outreach joined up with them to fill in their losses. These rogue mercs were made up of the Red Riders, Dark Lloyd's Wild Bunch, Garrett's Metal Shod, Upshaw's Highland Moors, and the Terriers. This gathering of mercenary forces made up more than 4 regiments of battle mechs. Colonel Wayne Waco took command of the mercenary forces in order to take out his grudge on the Dragoons. To make matters worse, Word of Blake ROM agents also pulled off terrorist and sabotage attacks. The Chinese bandits pulled off bombing raids on airfields and Dragoon barracks. This weakened the Dragoon aero fighters and killed many off-duty soldiers along with Dragoon civilians. The Tiger Sharks pulled a surprise attack on the Home Guard. The Panzers worked with the Rangers to destroy the Hiring Hall, Wolf Hall, and capture a spaceport. The Lone Wolves also attempted to attack the Dragoons, but several wolves sided with the Dragoons and battled their traitor brethren. Beta and Epsilon were on world, but their units were scattered around the world, and it took time to gather their forces together. Zeta and the Spiders were the first to arrive as reinforcements. Dragoon losses were heavy, with Epsilon being all but destroyed. The Home Guard was barely holding together. The remains of both units were used to fill in slots on Beta, Zeta, and the Spiders. Jamie Wolf led his forces against Wayne Waco near the ruins of the Hiring Hall. Waco was killed, but after the fight, Jamie Wolf also died from wounds sustained in the battle. As a response, Brian Cameron sent a message out to all Dragoons to take out any force that stood in their way. This led to fierce fighting and caused civilian casualties to reach 250,000. After some rebuilding, Beta and Zeta pressed forward, with assistance from the Dismal Disinherited. Gamma arrived and worked with the Spiders as the rear guard. After punishing the Blake forces on Outreach, Beta and Zeta headed out to take the fight directly to the Blakist forces. They were part of Task Force Vengeance, along with the 2nd Dismal Disinherited, Lyndon's Battalion, and minor members of the Allied Mercenary Command. They got swarmed by Blake drone units, which were not tactically skilled, but did have numbers. Only Zeta and part of the Dismal Disinherited made it to Mars. because Beta was destroyed in the orbit around Mars. The Dismal Disinherited were destroyed very quickly, and Zeta put up a good fight, but also fell to the 17th Division and orbital bombardments. After the end of the Word of Blake War, Wolf's Dragoons started to rebuild while being stationed on Ark Royal. In the early 32nd century, Beta was rebuilt as a training unit. They helped rebuild Alpha, the Spider's Web, and the Tarantula units. Over time, they were allowed to start raiding again. They hit worlds in the Duchy of Tamarind Abbey. Later, the Dragoons took a contract with the Draconis Combine in the late 3130s. At this time, Beta was finally at regimental strength and was once again used as a frontline unit. They had a friendly rivalry with the Ryukin as they tried to see who could take more worlds from the Federated Suns. The Wolf's Dragoons joined Clan Wolf in their Ill Clan trial. The Dragoons were part of Task Force Athena, the reserve troops that were used in the final push to defeat Clan Jade Falcon. Alpha and Delta broke the Falcon lines, and Beta and Gamma moved in to take advantage of the scattered Falcon troops. They hit the Falcon's Alpha Galaxy hard, and kept fighting even when Colonel Brubaker was killed. However, Alaric Ward ordered the retreat of the Dragoons, which led to more casualties as they pulled away from the Falcons. After the fighting was over, Beta was heavily damaged. The new Dragoon commander, Henry Kincaid, disbanded them and used their troops and equipment to fill in other holes in the Dragoon forces. The Wolf's Dragoons were dismissed and poorly paid for their services to Clan Wolf. After that, the Dragoons began rebuilding and started putting together plans to get revenge on Alaric Ward for his betrayal. Beta might not get the prestige of Alpha, but they are just as important to the history of Wolf's Dragoons. However, like Alpha, they were disbanded twice, and had to struggle to rebuild at several other moments. They will never be the poster children of the Wolf's Dragoons, but I'm sure they will return and be ready to take the fight to the Ilkhan. Like other Dragoon regiments, Beta has quite a few pilots of note. Jeremy Ellman, the first commander of Beta Regiment. He was an innovative tactician. He retired in 3016 due to the guilt of losing so many good soldiers. He then became the leader of the training corps and would also command the Home Guard who defended Dragoon dependents. His battle mech is unlisted. Andrei Shostakovich, the second commander of Beta Regiment. He was a big and outgoing person. He had a wild sense of humor, often messing with other important personnel. He died at the Battle of Crossing. He piloted a Battlemaster that was destroyed on Misery, then he piloted a Dervish until his death. Nikos Palasis, the first commander of Able Battalion. He was a bit of a hothead, and that got him hurt during the Merrick Civil War. He would remain with the unit until he retired in 3020. He piloted a Warhammer. Alicia Francher, the second commander of Able Battalion. She showed her leadership during the Merrick Civil War and took full command in 3020. She was a team player and didn't seek personal glory. Yet, she was pushed out of command after Misery, but was put back in command prior to the clan invasion. She would side with Alpen Wolf in the Dragoon Civil War and die in 3054. She piloted a Warhammer, and later she piloted an Executioner Gladiator Omnimech. Anton Rand took over as the new Beta Regiment commander after the Dragoon Civil War. He was known for being a hothead and not backing down. He died on Mars during the assault on the Word of Blake. His mech is not listed, but likely a Gallowglass. Michael Blue-Eyed Devil Hart, the Baker Battalion commander during the Battle of Hesperus II. A friendly intellectual, he got his nickname at Hesperus due to his fierce tactics and unexpected raids. He was known for his sarcasm, even with his troops, but sadly, his wit could not save his life on Misery, where he died after ejecting from his mech and having a Karita Warhammer fall on him. He piloted an Archer. John Umeo. He was a company commander of Able Battalion during the 3020s. He was cleared on charges of possibly leaking information to his Combine girlfriend. He was promoted to the XO of Beta after Misery. He tried to save Colonel Shostakovich on Crossing, but failed. He piloted a Battlemaster. Danielle Rondema, commander of Rondema's Roughnecks, a company of Charlie Battalion. She has a chaotic relationship with Michael Mercier of Epsilon. Her team took out 2 companies of Ryukin at Misery. She and her team would be wiped out during the 4th Succession War. She piloted an Atlas. Mackenzie Wolfe, son of Jamie Wolfe, who went under the name Darnell Winningham in his youth. He served in Beta Regiment in 3026. After the 4th Succession War, he was transferred to the Black Widow Battalion as a company commander. He was promoted to the leader of the Widows when Natasha Kerensky left the unit. He was also his father's second-in-command after the clan invasion. He was killed under suspicious circumstances just before the Dragoon Civil War. He piloted an Enforcer, but later he would pilot a Marauder II. Like all members of the Wolf's Dragoons, Beta Regiment has access to all weights of battle mechs. However, they have a general use of jump jet-equipped mechs in order to control the battlefield via maneuvering. Their main strategy is to hold back Charlie Battalion while the jump jet-equipped battle mechs draw the enemy in to a trap. Beta is led by a command company that had 2 lances of mechs, an infantry platoon, and 2 artillery platoons. Each of the battalions have a command lance with a standard company of mechs. But after 3055, they used star-based formations. Each battalion also has aerofighters, infantry, and armor support. Able Battalion, called the Cavaliers and later called the Horsemen, was a highly disciplined unit that used by-the-book tactics in battle. Baker Battalion, called the Heartbreakers, were designed to be flexible to change tactics for any situation. Charlie Battalion, originally called the Red Guard, later called Guillotine, were originally a defensive team, but in later years, they became a fast medium-weight unit known for charging in and finishing off the enemy. Eagle Battalion, called Kneecappers, is the elemental force made up of a command point and 3 elemental stars. Devil Battalion, called the Long Riders, was their armor battalion with a command lance and 3 armor companies. Beta was a strong unit that could shift their tactics for any enemy they faced. They had a full load of drop and jump ships to get them where they needed to go. Overall, an impressive regiment of elites ready for anything, even if they took heavy damage many times. There are many fiction entries featuring or referencing Beta Regiment. There are several Battle Corps stories, with 2 republished in anthologies. We also have a story in the classic BattleTech Companion, and an unpublished novel, Shadow of Faith, which was posted on Battle Corps but is mostly lost now. Beyond that, we have a few novels that tie into most of the adventures of the Wolf's Dragoons. There are many sourcebooks that tell the story of Beta as well as the rest of Wolf's Dragoons. These include a few mission books as well. There is plenty of information about every era, but some of the books only have location data. While not as famous as some of the other members of the Wolf's Dragoons, Beta Regiment stands out as a strong unit that held their own with some of the most elite soldiers to ever battle in the Inner Sphere. I was surprised how much history they had, and the sheer amount of fiction that tied into them. My respect for the Wolf's Dragoons keeps growing with every video. As for the tabletop, there are good reasons for making them, due to them having many great battles to recreate. However, the emerald green paint scheme might not be as recognizable as the rust red and black paint scheme that Alpha uses. Still, if you have an Alpha team, then go ahead and make a Beta team, because there is no reason to not have all the Dragoon regiments that you want. Next time, I will be looking into the story of Gamma Regiment, who has primarily been the backup team for other bigger units. Still, it will be an exciting journey into the history of the Wolf's Dragoons. Until next time, I want to give a big thank you to all the new subscribers. My channel keeps growing, and I don't have the words to explain how appreciative I am to all of you. May your weapons stay hot, and your reactors stay cool. Until next time, I'll see you at the tavern.